Welcome back to MSP Survivalist, Episode 3, Part 2. We continue speaking to Bill Dungey, a dental MSP, about his client screening process, red flags, cyber insurance, and more. You make a good point there about having to have, I don't know if like minds is the word.
It's a partnership.
A partnership, a screening process for both of you, I would imagine.
It has to be, because this is the way, especially in dental. Other industries, it's not like this, right? Let's say we have one client, that's a mechanic, right? And they have computers in their mechanic shop because they have to. But if they didn't have to, they wouldn't do that. Now, in a dental office, if your server's down, if your reception computers get stolen and you don't have other computers, if your network is offline, you are not making money, period. The network infrastructure and the systems that dental offices employ, it's the backbone of the whole operation. Sure, if you don't have hands in mouths, you can't charge for anything. But second to that is your computer systems. If we send out a quote, we're a Dell reseller, and I've done the whole thing, right? I had a turnkey operation set up with a local computer shop who used to build our systems. Then I used to build systems, and I used to buy all the components myself, build them all in-house, image them, and ship them out. And then once we got on board with a bigger distributor and started using Dell systems, it's so much easier. I'm pricing out a system. I can say this 10th gen i5 with a smoking SSD in it is going to absolutely annihilate your 2018 i3. I can say that with complete confidence. When that conversation turns into, for example, we had an opportunity with a new client recently, maybe at the very beginning of the summer, where I quoted a whole bunch of stuff. The quote came back. We ping-ponged it back and forth a couple times. That's what happens. And then this particular client or would-be client went to eBay to see if they could find some systems that were either off lease or the same system I was quoting, but cheaper. And that's pretty much where I cut the cord. And I'm like, all right, it's just not going to work, because there has to be a mutual respect. So that's one of the red flags for me anyway. I mean, it's a give and take as always.
I think most MSPs would say that they're going to run into some walls if they accept any customer off the street that happens to ask their services without having any kind of a screening process, without being able to check off some of those boxes, as you say.
That's where I'm not so quick to throw Gary V out with the Gary V bathwater, right? Because when we first started, if you had computers, we wanted to work with you. So we were taking contracts for offices that were a 6-hour drive away. And so when we first started, it was me and Cliff in a busted up old RAV4. And when we were driving between service calls, I had a laptop with one of those ISP Fire Sticks in it, solving problems remotely. So right now we have the luxury and the opportunity to dismiss clients that don't pay. We've had a couple instances where we've had clients that brand new to us, we've never worked with them before, and they've called us and they got hit with crypto or something. And everything's locked down, they need to do a full restore, and we got to work through a long weekend or something. And then they just don't pay.
Wow.
And so you get those two, but then we've had a couple dentists. I just got a call from this guy the very beginning of last week. Mm-hmm. Every single year he buys us cookies for Christmas. And so last week he was like, well, it's that time again, Bill. I'll have to meet you out here. So It's not like it's a one-way street when it comes to dental. You just gotta, I guess there's an intuition that needs to be developed about it.
Do you have a stance on insurance? Do you recommend to your dental clients that they have any kind of cybersecurity insurance?
I have a stance on insurance. Everybody has a stance on insurance. Cybersecurity insurance, you know what? During the initial end of the world lockdown in March 2020, I used that time to go do the Security Plus course because I've always just been like a basement hacker guy. I don't have any certs, so I was like, well, I might as well start with this one. And they were all about cybersecurity insurance. You got to get insured, you got to get insured. We have a couple clients that are adamant about cybersecurity insurance, and a couple of them that just laugh in the face of who on earth would pay for that. I don't know personally anybody that's ever made a claim for cybersecurity insurance.
Oh, we do. Oh, we do. So many people.
So how does that work?
Yeah, Nate, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I know of at least a couple of very large companies that had multi-million-dollar claims against insurance that paid out. Nothing to do with our backup software or anything like that, but it was how they were doing and storing their backups, and crypto and the hackers that got in just went in and wiped it all out when they didn't have any offsite. I've seen some really big messes, but I've also seen cyber insurance companies, as soon as something hits, they're willing to get quote unquote their guy to talk to the ransomware people to negotiate down a ransom, pay it, and get the company up and running as quickly as possible, because it costs them less money to pay the ransom than even have the downtime of recovering from backups in some cases, which kind of bothers me. The fact that they're going to get paid, and it almost feels like the people that are on the negotiating side of the cyber insurance people are in cahoots with the ransomware people. It's just a little off.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Even if it's not that way, it must feel that way.
You get the vibe like it is. Why don't that insurance company flake some money off to these MSPs, enhance their quote-unquote capabilities and whatnot, and hey, the insurance company might actually save money by boosting up the MSPs.
Well,
I don't know.
You said a couple big companies, Nate. Do you think there's like a barrier, whether like a cost barrier or education barrier, that kind of puts smaller offices off, or it's just a gut reaction?
The only reason I know some of these larger companies is because I was dealing directly with them, but I know a lot of smaller companies that have had cyber insurance of some sort that have paid out too. I've read a couple posts on the MSP subreddit that some cyber insurance premiums are like quadrupling or even more, in some cases not even allowing them to renew because it's getting so bad. So I think we're going to go through a couple years of growing pains here as this goes through.
Yeah, it's almost too good to be true just to have an insurance and then all of a sudden they just pay you, no problem at all. Like, I can't imagine like the monthlies and premiums and stuff like that are even going to be remotely affordable for everybody. I'm always wondering that too, if there's hack jobs out there that are insurance companies that's just making a quick buck too. I'm sure that's happening, but that'd be interesting in the next 5 years.
Especially when you're talking about something like cybersecurity, because even if you work in tech but security isn't your thing, it's just wizardry. So some of those like hack insurance providers that you're saying must exist, I agree with you, they must, because they could just throw together some word salad about security and you'd sign the piece of paper thinking you're protected. I would have to assume that would be the case.
Fear is a powerful tool. That's all they're using. One of our customers, an MSP, was losing a couple of his customers because another MSP or service provider rather came into the area and had the backing of an actual insurance provider. So they're throwing around a lot of money, throwing around a lot of fear tactics and things like that. And that guy lost a customer that was, I don't know what it was, like 8 years. And then, of course, a couple weeks later, they totally screwed up everything and they couldn't get in their systems. And then, of course, who they fall back on? Yeah, good old Reliable.
Bill, I imagine you've probably gone through different technologies and solutions over the years. Are there any tools in your kit that you find are indispensable or important throughout the course of the day?
Huntress is the big one. They have this technology called a ransomware canary. As soon as I instituted it across all of our servers, I was like, man, I wish I thought of this. Basically, it monitors these files that it creates, basically hidden documents on the systems that it's installed on. And if those documents are changed in any way by ransomware, like encrypted by ransomware, it'll flag them and then send you this message and say, hey, by the way, it looks like ransomware's here. Looks like an early warning type thing. We go in and out of tool sets. One thing that changed a lot for us was learning about virtualization, adopting VMware, and we have a couple clients that have been able to make great use out of virtualization, even if the people on site don't really understand that there's 3 servers running in the server. It has saved some of our dental clients from needing a practice management server and an imaging server and just different servers for different applications. The one tool we're just starting to use now, which I'm hoping is recognized much more widely than it is currently, we're just starting to do email phishing campaigns, leveraging a piece of software called GoFish. It's basically like a self-hosted little email server that can send out emails to targets and track everything about them. So they can track the click rate, the open rate, they can track attachments, and you can cordon off different messages into different campaigns. So for example, I can send out one email to everybody in the organization that's you logged out of Facebook, click here to log back into Facebook. And then I can send a more directed and targeted email to, let's say, like managers within that organization, pretending to be somebody else from the organization. So
yeah, as a marketing guy myself who's not really interfacing with these kind of customers, I always imagine that kind of stuff as being a little touchy or sensitive. Obviously, they're going to know at some point, or at least the management is going to know, that you might be conducting these test campaigns. How does that work?
So there's multiple ways you can go about it, right? Either everybody's aware, which defeats the purpose, because then we're not testing actual posture. We're not testing to see how defensively ready or capable your organization is. It's ideal to test against real world considerations, right? I'm staging this offensive email plus. I'd like to get into some on-site social engineering, some phone and text social engineering, to see specifically how much information I can get from some of these targets, and using some techniques and tactics and procedures that are found in the real world. Like, say for example, I have a number of sock puppet accounts on the internet. So these are, for all intents and purposes, if you look these people up on the internet, they look like real people. 2 of them specifically I'm quite active with on social media, and they have friends. And these people that I'm interacting with are convinced that I was in their class at Seneca, right, a local college. But the thing is, it creates this identity online that I can use to, instead of sending the, hey, click here for your reward type phishing email, I can send an email from somebody who is absolutely, completely believable. And I can say, hey, my name is Bob, and I'm from an agency just like yours, and we're not open yet. We're going to be opening in 3 weeks at this address, and we're having a heck of a time finding a reliable cleaner. Is there any way you can tell me who's doing your cleaning services on site? The idea being, if I can find out who does the cleaning, I could maybe get a shirt screen printed with that company, show up as the cleaner, and say, you know what? This new temp that we just hired left the mop bucket downstairs. Do you mind if I just run down there and grab it? And let's be honest, I'm in Canada, right? Everybody's going to be like, oh, sure, get down there, boys. They'll hold the door for me. The thing is, if I start discussing cybersecurity, most of our clients envision the guy with the black hoodie in a dark basement, like the mechanical keyboard, tack, 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 capital H, hacking, right? But the vast majority of loss comes from poorly worded emails from people who look like they have authority, asking people to do things they wouldn't normally do. So what that looks like in real time is, we just finished up a phishing campaign with a local dental office. But when I say dental office, it's a production, right? They have a whole whack of stuff going on in there. During that engagement, like, I was posing as management from within that building, asking them to send me employee schedules. Or for example, we're just about to start one in January, right after the holidays. that has a much longer time frame, which is ideal because it lets me build and build and build. I can build trust and real relationships with the people that I'm communicating with. And during that conversation where we're trying to set out the rules of engagement, what am I allowed to touch? What am I not allowed to touch? This is where I can get maybe a little bit more toward the extreme end of things, where it doesn't really fit the scope and scale of a dental office. But if we're talking about a major multi-million-dollar corporation, I'd be interested to see, what do the employees do if some of these things happen? So not only if I get a weird email and, oh, this looks like it's from Trevor, but it doesn't look like it's from Trevor, so I'm going to report it, and that's the safest thing to do. Well, what happens if the CEO gets kidnapped? What happens? You can go all the way from somebody's trying to get this little dental office to buy Apple gift cards posing as the owner, all the way up to when the big boss man comes back from his lunch break, the red team's sitting there waiting at his car saying, actually, you're not going back to the office. We want to see what happens if we pose a kidnapping here. I don't know. Social engineering, I think that's where it's at right now for spreading awareness about cybersecurity, because a lot of people think that, well, I'll just install AVG and that'll be good enough. And then they're responding to every email they get, you know? If people stop clicking on things, I'll be out of a job, for real.
True. Yeah, no doubt about it. This whole like phishing thing with the emails, I'm going to go down probably the darkest rabbit hole ever and learn more about this, because that has intrigued the heck out of me. There's always intrusion detection and testing weaknesses in firewalls and things like that, but this is a whole other level of making sure your clients are educated without being able to study for the test first. So,
IDS and IPS are useless if I show up with an orange vest, a clipboard, and command presence. They'll open the door for me. I'll send you a bunch of links in any case, because if you like that, you should start looking up open source intelligence so you can realize like exactly how terrifying the internet is. I'll send you a whole bunch of stuff you can get lost in tonight.
Good. I can change up my nightmares a little bit.
Well, great. Bill, coming to the close of our conversation today, I had a couple closing questions. Maybe the greatest lesson you've learned in the last few years, any lesson that you could impart upon us from working with dental clients for those that are looking to enter the dental field?
Sure, that's easy. There's a big difference between preparedness and paranoia. And especially when it comes to things like planning for emergencies and failover and redundancy, you have to walk that line carefully, but you should think about what would be the absolute worst thing that could happen and plan for that. Because I can just tell you from experience, it's not fun getting caught with your pants down. And especially from an ownership perspective, especially if you have a team working with you and like they look over at you and go, okay, now what? You should at least be actively about, if this happens, I'll do that. If that happens, I'll do that. Now, there's always the unknown. But as somewhere to start, too many times I read guys that are either working for crews or have experience from crews that just flatly assume nothing's going to happen. Second to that, I would say everybody from every single position in every single organization should be reading Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. The technical fields are plagued with finger pointing. It's an absolute disease that runs through. So I can't go on site to a client's office without the x-ray provider saying, well, no, this is a practice management question. And the practice management people saying, well, it looks like a printer problem to me. And even when we're on the same team, helping the same client, nobody wants to take ownership for the problem. So that's one place where I try to get our guys all on the same path, where we go, it doesn't matter what the problem is, I'm here and I'm gonna fix it. Another one to check out is Start with Why from Simon Sinek. You can't fundamentally put forward good work without a correct aim, and you can aim incorrectly. I think organizations generally are underserved by people who aren't willing to invest in what's required to be at that position. Even if you're like a base level 1 help desk, you're not even like a sysadmin yet, it will be known and appreciated if you take those problems, put them on the bar and squat them and be like, I have this. You can trust me with this. You know, so that'd be my 2 big things: is plan for the worst and educate yourself on Jocko Willink.
I think those are great recommendations. Can't thank you enough for joining us today. I think you've just given us a wealth of things to think about.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Adam, Nate, thanks for joining us today.
Yep, no problem at all. This was awesome.
Hey,
Lots of knowledge.
Yeah, thanks for putting this all together. It's very helpful.